If you're building out an automation flow for your business, you don't want to do this because this is going to cause a lot of headaches and a lot of frustration for you. So what am I referring to? When you're building out an automation and you're mapping information or custom fields, you don't want to have static inputs like this. If you see here is 8GR3, there's this one here. I'll explain a bit further how we can overcome that, but where is that related in your automation or your service delivery? On the right hand screen I've got it here. This is making a bit of gobbledygook for you. So where we're at right now in this particular workflow, which I'll zoom out and show you, we're at the stage where we've won a new job, so new client work for our service-based business. We have requested client information. So this workflow is going to relate to that. At the high level, you'll see what I mean. And in this case here, we have received the information from the client and we want to update our project management for the client delivery. So this one here, if you look very closely, these custom fields relate to current step and also the status. So if we zoom out, if you look closely, 8GR is this current step. So we want to have this dynamic. So why do you want to have that dynamic? And status. If we go to this part here, and we do a search for here, we'll find the status is in progress. So that makes sense because we've received the information. Now we want to project manage this service delivery, and I'll explain how you can create this on this right hand screen a little bit later. So if we zoom out our workflow automation software, the automation software might be linear like this. This is Pablo Connect, it might be Zapier, or it might be something like more visual like make.com. But in any case, the principles still apply to your situation. Again, this is what we want here. We've got raw JSON and we want to ideally make all these items dynamic. We want to make sure when we build our automation that we have minimal inputs, because if we have all static custom fields scattered all within our workflow automation, if we copy the entire workflow, we're going to have a really hard time finding the likes of something like this. Static input and that static input, as well as that static input. So what's the best way to do that? The best way to do that is to also have dynamic inputs like this. This is mapping to another section. So while we don't want to have static fields hidden within our steps when we're building a workflow, is if we ever want to potentially save time, we can copy entire workflows, but we're going to have a really hard time finding any static inputs. So it's always best to have it obvious and upfront. So what we would do in this case here, we can do things like this. So always refer back to a dynamic input that we can later map in another section of our workflow. And if we look here, we've mapped the likes of service type. Number 8, we have mapped property address. And I'll show you property address as an example. So we click on 9. So look at this one here. So we're looking at this particular address here for the property type. So if we click on this one as an example, we're going to show where that map data is. Number 3, create project. And as you can see, it's right here. So number 9, this input, this one here is mapped to this one here. Right there. And you're going to save time by having all dynamic inputs. So instead of changing, finding all your inputs scattered throughout your entire workflow, because you might have multiple references to the same input, you just want to input it once and then map that input across all the related modules. So hopefully that makes sense. Any feedback or comments, welcome. So hopefully that helps you. And if you want to know how to create these particular modules, we'll go through that. So what we want to do, we want to create a current step that is dynamic. This one here, we want that to be dynamic. And we don't want to have that lost within a workflow. So we're going to place that. Instead of having a static input, we're going to create one input at the very start of the workflow where we can put that. So what we're going to do, we're going to copy this. Going to go current step. So we're looking at where is the logical place to have a current step. So we've got service type, property, so it's going to be here. So I'm just going to create in this case here, this particular module, text basic, is a good example of that. I like to use this normalize centered letters because then it doesn't change anything. Save. Going to rename this so I know what it relates to. Current step. Current step in what? In this case, it's the job. Current step. There we go. So we're going to map module 10. To current step down here, which when I label, I like to put in order. So we don't get confused of what the JSON relates to. And this is a good example in what's happening in practice. So I'm going to quickly do this. So what's happening, going to update. Just going to do this on the fly because I've noticed that I wanted to change this earlier. It's got service type first. The second one is service option. Let's call it service option. Keep it consistent. The next value is current step. Value. So I did this on the fly, so make sure that it comes sequentially. So this label matches the sequence of your JSON, and we'll go over the JSON in another video. So what we're referring to, if you recall, I'm going to copy this, go into a search, and if you recall module 10, we've just changed that to dynamic. So instead of losing this static input within your workflow, and if you do copy the entire workflow, it's not going to use the old existing information. It's always going to be updated accordingly. So we have to make sure we save it. And you'll repeat it with all these ones here, the status as well. We can do the status as well. So I'll just copy that for the time being. Make sure you always save. So what status are we referring to? We're referring to a service. So I'm just going to clone, rename, status of the job, paste that in, save and send test. So 11, we scroll down to the bottom. In our label, it's going to be the last. I didn't save that ampersand, or if I do and, that should work. Status is this one here. So we're going to copy that. We're going to search for it. Ignore this red underline. This is just Grammarly working, which I need to delete that from ever showing when I build these automation software, because it's not related. It's not relevant. So what we've done, we've pasted the dynamic input into there. So there you have it. You just repeat this task with any other static inputs, so we don't cause issues for us later on down the track. What we've done here, we're simply incorporated best practice into building this workflow by making sure we don't have any static inputs in our workflow builder. We've changed those static inputs to dynamic inputs. As you can see here, the white ones. So we'll go through and make sure when we build our workflows, we only have dynamic inputs. So that's going to save any headaches in the future. So hopefully that helped. Thank you. Bye for now. Matt K. Cheers.